Ready to go live. All right, welcome to our Halloween Friday night live Facebook chat. I am Paranormal Network manager Jason Hewlett. And we're talking Halloween, and I got some special guests here I'm going to introduce in a moment. Not Michael Myers and the creepy guy on that side of the screen. Oh my God, it's the back and forth. Anyways, enough of that. Halloween began in pre-Christian Celtic Ireland, where Samhain, the festival of fire and feasting, signaled the end of the season of light and start of the dark days of winter. Samhain implied that there could be interaction between the worlds of the living and the dead, that spirits could move between them. To protect against getting, quote, pulled into the underworld before their time, the Celts wore costumes to, quote, scare off the roaming ghosts and demons. The tradition has endured over millennia, only to become global and secular, with people everywhere donning costumes, impersonating ghoulish characters, lighting bonfires or bonefires, as Tracey pointed out tonight, and taking out processions and visiting neighbors and friends, celebrating Fright Nights. As for the practice of carving pumpkins into scary faces and lighting them up in the hollowed out parts, this is an Irish tradition, actually. These jack-o'-lanterns began with potatoes and turnips and later got extended to pumpkins when Irish migrants to pumpkin-rich America carried out their tradition with them. Originally, children would go door to door souling, asking for food and money in return for singing songs and offering prayers for the souls of the dead. Now they give out candy, treats, and other gifts. So some dark stuff there. But we're not here as a history show. This isn't a history lesson. Tonight, I'm joined by paranormal investigator and my We Want to Believe and Hunting the Haunted co-host Peter Renn and psychic Tracey Bach to discuss how the paranormal relates to Halloween, if it even does at all. Welcome, you guys. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I'm good. How are you, young man?
I am great, Peter.
Good.
But I'm older than you, so I appreciate that you always call me young man. Thank you very much.
That goes a long way, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And Tracey, thanks for the bonfire thing. Can you relate where that came from, actually? The bonfire for bonfire?
Yeah, I think it actually dates back way, way long. So I don't know how far back, but I think the Scottish, it's a Scottish term, bane fire, perhaps. And it's where they would make the big fires to burn their dead. And so you end up with a bunch of bones at the end of it. So they called it a bonfire.
That's interesting and appropriately spooky given the topic.
And I imagine it would happen at Halloween or around that end of October, beginning of November when they did do a lot of that anyway.
Absolutely. And it shows that kind of end of season as we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
In the beginning of a new season. And as we know, Halloween has long been associated with ghosts and goblins and spirits and demons. And Peter, now you've been a paranormal investigator now for almost 30 years, I think, right?
Almost, yeah, 20.
Almost aging you there quite a bit. From your many years of experience all over the world, does paranormal activity actually increase at Halloween or around Halloween?
Generally, no. Historically, for example, when I was a part of Vancouver Paranormal Society, we typically get a lot of wacky inquiries, like people with very bizarre questions and stuff like that. And generally just inquiries. We do get a lot of investigations, but they don't really kind of amalgamate too much. I think it's just people that this time of year, they think that they associate with paranormal, and they think that anything that any natural thing that's going on in their house could possibly be that paranormal thing. So they call us in, and 9 times out of 10 it's not.
Which we talk about a lot, and we've done that on Hunting the Haunted as well. Like a lot of the times these hauntings aren't so much supernatural in origin, but very natural. And just a quick shout out to Sinan on YouTube, who wished everyone a happy almost Halloween, everybody. Happy almost Halloween, Sinan. We appreciate that. Trace, this kind of ties into the first question I had with Peter. There's talk even in my introduction about this is the time when the veil is supposed to be thinnest between our world and the spirit world. What have you found? Like, because you first explain a bit what you do as a psychic to start that off, and then dig into the question, please.
Yeah. So, like, speaking of paranormal, I don't think what I do is actually paranormal. I think it's quite normal. So there's nothing para about it. I think we all have this ability. So it is kind of, I think the Halloween season is kind of, I call it I hope I can say this, but the Tesla factor. So I really want a Tesla. So
car?
everywhere I go, I see Teslas, right? And when I make it a black Tesla, I'm seeing all these black cars that might not be Teslas, but I'm thinking, oh, it's a Tesla. So I think that around the Halloween season, because we're talking so much about the afterlife and about ghosts and about paranormal, we tend to react as if there's more. So the veils really, it's kind of like a spiritual cataract, I would say. So your eyes, the physical eyes can't see energetic beings, so can't see spirit. And so the theory is that these cataracts get thinner near the Halloween season, so these veils, and that we can actually witness the it's sort of like a luminal space, almost like an energetic threshold where the unseen and seen collide. And it's this space. And so they say at Halloween that gets thinner, and your average person that maybe doesn't believe can see spirit. For me, it doesn't change. It's
Not at all.
the same. No, it's the same. Like if I'm speaking or I'm getting, because it's all energetic. So if I'm getting an energetic guidance or an energetic voice or communication in any kind of way, it doesn't change throughout the year. And I just think that people are more aware. And so maybe they're looking for signs from their loved ones, or they're looking for signs from ghosts. And so it might seem like they're thinner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oracle and Intuitions wished us all a happy Halloween weekend. Happy Halloween to you, Kathy. Thank you for coming by. And Mike Bloomfield has shared this to American Ghost Stories. Thanks, Mike, and welcome. So do you think, so is it then this whole belief that there's more ghost activity, guys, this time of year because of the tradition of it? Do you think more, or do you think it's just there's more attention being paid to this spooky stuff because there's decorations out everywhere and, you know, more horror movies and shows on TV and stuff? What do you guys think? Whoever wants to start that off.
I think my side of the fence, well, Tracey deals on both sides of the fences, but typically with me, I think it's
easy. Easy.
No, I think generally in regard to what I've been doing, typically it's because people, you know, they're kind of getting in the groove. They're watching the movies, they're watching the Halloween movies, they're watching, all these kind of type horror movies that come out this time of year, and they're they may be kind of, particularly sensitive to things like that. And like I was saying earlier on, and they, with any natural occurrence that could happen in their house, they could interpret that at the time as it being paranormal. That's why they're like, oh, this is happening, that's happening. And, I don't obviously as an investigator brush it off. I have, investigated and stuff like that. But historically, yeah, we've had a few around this time of year, like, active cases as such where we've found finds and stuff like that. But typically it's just driven by the time of year.
And the consumerism about probably attached to it as well, right?
Yeah.
Media marketing, etc.
Yeah,
what do you think, Tracey?
Well, I think that anytime you get a group of people, like a crowd of people, or a society of people concentrating on one thing, we're amazing beings of manifestation as well. And so there's an energetic component to it that we're all kind of heightened energetically. And so maybe we're manifesting certain things to happen energetically, whether it's paranormal or not. Like we have quite the capacity to create our own reality as human beings. And when you have a whole society, or like say even in my neighborhood, everybody's thinking Halloween, everybody's thinking ghosts, the likelihood of that energy being risen enough that something appears is certainly heightened.
What do you think of that, Peter? Like do you think it's how would you respond to that, Peter? Someone who you deal with kind of more the pseudoscientific side of things. What do you think about that idea that we kind of can create this spookiness happening?
I believe a majority of cases that I've dealt with, and pretty much most of them, a lot of it is to do with what is inside our heads. And I'm not saying it's just someone making these incidences up and stuff like that, but the mind does play a huge factor into relation to what we are studying, and it does have that kind of effect. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree with what Tracey's been saying. But back in the UK, it's funny where I grew up, we don't like Halloween is very distant in relation to what it is in North America, and it didn't play so well out with investigations over there this time of year than what it does out here, because it's so advertised. Like, you know, you wouldn't go to places like, well, there wouldn't be a Walmart in the UK anyway, but you wouldn't go to a store where there's you know, Halloween decor everywhere and stuff like that. They wouldn't be dressing up in windows, you know, Halloween stuff. It'd be just very minimal, and that comparison would illustrate that it's more, I guess, this time it's more focal in relation to the people and what their mind's thinking rather than what is actually there.
And it is more of a North American holiday too, right? When I was in Australia, they never even celebrated. I think they've only really started celebrating it in the last few years.
Yeah, in Australia, they celebrate every day because they drink a lot.
That's right. That's very, very true.
Well, life should be a celebration, really.
I know, every
Exactly.
day.
Yeah. Right? What are we else we here for? Cheers.
Any day could be our last. Let's just have a good time. I mean, come on, people.
Beers on the beach. It's a day. Let's celebrate that day.
Yeah.
As Sinan says, it might be easier to think about scary things when there are cute things around too, sort of a balance in terms of mindset there.
Yeah.
This is kind of spinning off a bit on something. I read an article this week, you know, about the Slender Man phenomenon. Of course, that started as a you know, a creepypasta on the internet, but people are starting to report actual sightings of slender men in the woods, like a tulpa. It's kind of tying into what you said, Tracey, about almost manifesting, believing in things enough that you can manifest that. What do you guys think about that in terms of ghosts? Do you think we could create a haunting just if enough people kind of believed in it? Or
I think in relation to Slender Man, there is I've had a couple of cases in the interior where one was in Princeton, and there was another case that was actually, I think it was just, actually it wasn't in the interior, it's just outside Squamish, where they actually identified the kind of the characteristics of a Slender Man. And when I kind of digged deeper into, you know, what were they doing before and stuff like that, they actually were, you know, accustomed to the movie and stuff like that. And they watched the movie as well. They're fans of the movie and that kind of thing as well. So it does have that kind of, you know, I'm not begrudging. There might be that kind of Slender Man thought theory out there, or there could be the Slender Man out there, but it hasn't been kind of evident at all.
what do you think, Tracey, about that the whole thought of making something real that wasn't?
Yeah, so there is, you know, I come from maybe a different side than you people do, but there is a universal law that we do create our own reality. So what we're thinking about in terms of high vibe, low vibe, whatever it is, that we will call that into us. So I do kind of, you know, is it paranormal? Like I said, I think all of this stuff is normal. In you know, we're all human beings that are normally able to intuit spirit activity. But I do think that it is when we raise our energy. So when we're concentrating or we're heightened energy or vibrating at a higher level, could be anxiety even, that it is almost like a portal in certain ways, or a vortex in certain ways, that spirit energy can come through. Is that always bad stuff? I think whether it's bad or good, labeling it becomes a part of what the brain does as opposed to what it actually is. So it could be just spirit trying to speak to you. It could be grandma that just wants to say, hi, I'm still here, I love you, but you're going to interpret it maybe as Slender Man, because our brains really try and put things into like a really human or something that we've seen before. So our brains want to make something that we experience recognizable. And so I think there's a component to that. So I think it's kind of both. Is that too fancy for you?
No,
too much on the fence.
Just like good sense, right? And it ties into what we kind of kicked this conversation off with. That it's a time of year when you're programmed to think there are ghosts and spirits around more. Yeah. So you start seeing more of that because you've gone looking for it, right?
So when I was in the RAF, Royal Air Force, we were trained. Like I was only in there for a few months, but we trained in Wales, and there was we trained just outside of a small village in Wales, and there was an old tower of a bridge that used to be, before they started, you know, highways and stuff like that, integrating villages and stuff like that. There was one, this particular village, there was one exit in, and you can only go in and out via this one bridge. And there was a story that was generated that there was a giant that lived on the bridge, and that would deter any of the children leaving the village. And they would say, oh, the giant's going to get you, the giant's going to get you, and stuff like that. and that story went from generation to generation to generation. And there is, I'll have to dig it up, sorry, but there is actually sightings of that they say is that there's a giant like man that actually roams around the bridge, because it's been spotted by tourists and stuff like that, and people that have no concept of the story whatsoever. So it's definitely there is some thought pattern in relation to that, pardon the pun, but it's the thought process going into it, and you're thinking. And I guess it's a stigma about people believing their own BS. It's it's that kind of concept, I guess.
Because we like Tracey was saying, we do like to categorize things and kind of compartmentalize it and make we want everything to make sense in our mind. So
rational thoughts and stuff like that.
But the other component. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Tracey.
Well, the other component of that too is where do we get our history from? Like, where do we get our knowledge? So there's a lot of wisdom that, getting back to the veils almost, is that, modern society has placed these veils on paranormal. This is paranormal and it's explainable and it's BS, as Peter said. And so we have to kind of also look at the history of sort of verbal tradition as there's a potential there that we're just not seeing it, or that, capabilities have changed because of technology, wisdom, whatever, knowledge, whatever it is, that maybe there is something to it, not to be contrary in any kind of way. But when there's generation upon generation of verbal history, or even written history or experiential history, that we kind of have to take that into account and go, well, is it really BS, or, what's going on here? Yeah.
Just want to say hi to Bobby, who said hi to us. Thanks, Bobby, for joining
us.
Hello,
Bobby.
Here.
Bobby.
So kind of with the Halloween thing, looking how it started, the tradition, how it started, in terms of trying to ward off evil spirits, and get, prepare for the winter and, do sacrifices to get good crops. How much, and it's now morphed into this, commercial holiday where kids are going out and getting candy. How much then, with your point, Tracey, do you think that was legitimate back in the time? Like, do you think there was a time when maybe because we were more open, we weren't distracted by our technology and everything, that spiritual activity was greater at this time of year and was interacting more with people? And now, because less people are believing, we've got like atheists, etc., who just don't even see it. You think that's changed things in the world now with Halloween?
I think so too. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Is that probably 50 generations ago, or way back when, people were just more accustomed to having an interaction with spirit. And so in their limited education, maybe they thought they were all bad, right? Because it's not comfortable to see spirit for some people, especially, the scare spirits. So potentially they were just more open. It was just a way of their life. And so maybe we can take something from that and be, well, maybe it's a way of our life, not in a bad way, not that everything's a demon, right, Pete? Right, Pete? But that maybe there is, but by being open to it, that there can be like a really cool communication that goes on, that we can learn more. It's a thought.
What do you think, Peter?
Considering what I do for a living, I have to kind of be on the side of spirit here.
Well, no, which I think it's great to have you on. And then because Peter and I have worked together for a number of years now, and I know kind of how Peter would answer this question, but what do you think about that, Peter? Like, do you think there's less activity now just because of the way people perceive things at this time of year? Or do you think it's always kind of been just more this way?
It's always generally been, this kind of way where people just more enlightened this time of year. Sorry.
I hope that enheartened isn't in a jar.
Yeah, no kidding, right? It's in this can. But,
yeah.
So, Peter, you think it's just more that people are just kind of a bit wiser now, that we've kind of evolved more as people? That
I don't think people are more wiser now, because obviously during the recent pandemic, it really gone to show. But that's a different conversation altogether.
Yeah.
What the human species is actually capable of. I generally think that it's kind of been the same repetitiveness over the last 2 decades in relation to people and their sensitivity to the seed, like Halloween and stuff like that. And that'll always be in play, because as the generations go on, we get obviously some of us get older and wiser, but the younger generation coming as well, and then they're all, there's that continuous cycle.
Do you think, like, I've noticed a lot more talk in the last few years about the paranormal in general and spirituality. Do you think there's kind of this desire now to connect more with the spiritual side of the world around us and the potentially supernatural paranormal side of things? And what do you think could be driving that now? Whoever wants to start.
I'll start about the spirituality side.
Yeah, go on. Yeah,
Yeah. So I do actually feel like people are, especially in the last couple of years with what the world has gone through, but beyond that, and maybe in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, that people are kind of feeling that loss of connection, not just with one another, but just with community and with, we've had some disastrous news stories around religion and things like that. And so they're trying to figure out how to connect with their own spirit. And so I think spirituality, they're just exploring. And so this is what I'm seeing, people do get confused probably about, I'm not a big believer in hauntings in any kind of way. Like I think they're very, very, very few and far between, if at all. But people choosing to sort of connect with spirit in some sort of way is basically a renewed phenomena. Yeah.
Peter, what do you think?
I think media's played a lot on it over the last maybe over the last decade. I think because of the abundance of TV shows, both spiritual and the ghost hunters and that kind of thing, and that's kind of, it's brought a lot of things to light as well in the field, and there are pros in it and there's cons to it as well, where it gives like the viewers, they can look in and say, okay, there is this kind of thing going on out there, and it is acknowledged now rather than it being a taboo subject and say what it was like 2 decades ago. So there is that to it, and it brings a lot of people to the service in relation to their spirituality beliefs and stuff like that, and kind of floating upon what Tracey's saying as well about the kind of religious aspect as well. It gives everyone a more kind of opportunity to explore their spiritual and religious beliefs, because there is a connection there as well in relation to what they want to perceive.
Absolutely. And I've noticed, like Bobby here saying he had a paranormal experience back in 78 when he went into an abandoned house and saw a book floating across the room like someone was carrying it, but I didn't see anyone. What do you guys think about that, Peter? You've seen some spooky stuff in your time. Have you seen anything quite like a book? I know you and I had a toy hammer go flying off a shelf when we were on an investigation, but what about a book?
I had sorry, when you say the moving book, it reminds me of the scene out of Ghostbusters.
That's right.
In the library. I was investigation in Maple Ridge, and actually this is one of the first investigations I did with Vancouver Paranormal Society. There was me and Daniel. He was my old VP there. We saw a pack of cards be flipped on the floor, and there was I saw a kettle pot. Which I believe levitated in a house in England once as well, many years ago. But actually seeing things visibly move, like that kind of, I wouldn't say poltergeist activity, because generally that is, that's put in its own individual bubble. But I've seen other things like that before. But things like that, like books moving and stuff like that, is very rare. Like that is kind of a once in a lifetime kind of thing. It's only because I've gone out and looked for kind of stuff like that because I enjoy it. That's probably why I've witnessed things probably a lot more than what the average person has.
How about you, Tracey? What do you think, someone going into an abandoned house and seeing that, what does that say to you, seeing a book move across a room? What does that say to you?
Get the heck out. No, just kidding. I've had an experience like that too. I was working in a sort of spiritual store, and I don't know if you know, oracle cards are just almost like a deck of cards. They were on the shelf, and I heard ruckus. I turned around, and they were being shot across the room as if somebody was doing 52 pickup. So like across the room, and it's like, I know I was the only one in the store. So yeah, it can happen, but the thing is whether you're scared or not. I do think that energy, spirit, ghosts, whatever we want to call them, can move things. It is, energy can't be destroyed or created in a closed environment. And so where does that energy go? If you have a few sort of energetic beings or divine beings, let's say, that want to move a physical object, I think it's quite possible.
I think the last time I witnessed anything like that was actually when you and I were doing an episode of Hunted and Haunted, when I was upstairs and the bathroom door started moving backwards and forwards, and going back to my reaction and stuff like that, I was kind of more taken back because it was the way the door was moving backwards and forwards. It wasn't like that gentle breeze, like you see in the movies where they go, oh, the door's moving. But it was to the point. It was there's no one there kind of thing. But it was like someone had their hand on the door and they were physically pushing it backwards and forwards and stuff like that. Then it stopped. And then it was happening again. And it was just like, I was just sitting there when Jason was, I think Jason was talking at the time. And half the time I don't listen to him anyway. And I kind of switched off and I'm looking at this thing and it just, just going off in front of me. And it was just like, okay, the HVAC isn't on. And then what would, the HVAC wouldn't call that anyway, because the way it physically moved is like that is not, air being blown through the house, because it would have either shut the door, slammed it shut, or pushed the door far open, because there was that, that back and forth in it.
It's I think what Cyan says here, everyone wants to be heard, especially if they left things unsaid, I think. And I think we could all agree with that, Tracey, especially you. And then Bobby says, that's exactly what I did. I got out of there.
Yeah, attaboy.
Don't fault them. We're pretty much coming up to the end of our half hour here. Is there any kind of comments you guys want to make? Just lastly, touching on Halloween and the paranormal, etc. in general, guys? Or
I think overall over the years, and I'm probably going to delve into probably the more negative side of the field. We've had since I've been in Canada this time of year, you always hear about the thrill seekers that go in and break into places this time of year for their cheap thrill, and it's always been, I guess that is the cancer of what we do. That stigma we get where people break into buildings and stuff like that, and it just generally sheds a negative light on what the positive people like us are trying to do in the field. Bring some kind of comfort to people in relation to what they experience and stuff like that. So it's always bad to hear things like that. But then it's on the flip side of that, on the more positive side, it is good opportunity for us as to what we're doing this weekend, Jason, to go out there and meet the public and show them our equipment. Hey!
Just a regular Sunday occurrence.
Yeah, at least with Peter. Yeah. He shows his equipment as often as he can.
Yeah.
Tracey, how about yourself? What kind of final thoughts would you have? What would you say to people like at Halloween right now who are maybe worried about the paranormal and etc.?
Yeah, have some fun with it. Be safe, of course. Like, you have to energetically be safe. Don't be trying to, call in things that nobody wants to see. But, I invite people to do seances and to play with Ouija board and things like that, but just really have a pure heart and for the highest good of all. So anytime that especially around Halloween, it's a lot of fun to think about all the what ifs. And I think that makes us a great species, because we're just curious. And so just be safe and, save the gummy bears for me.
Gummy bears and the liquor for after, right?
That's right.
Well, Peter, Tracey, thanks so much for coming on. It's been great to have you here. I definitely want to bring you both back again, because this is great. And I think we could probably find a lot of cool stuff to talk about between the three of us.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, have a happy and safe Halloween. We've got a new episode of the UFO Show coming up on Monday. Until then, stay spooky, everybody.